Hello, and welcome to the Talk to a Doc podcast. Today, our host, Katya, a certified health coach and founder of Health Coaches of Kentucky, will have a conversation with a doctor about important wellness issues that can help you make a difference in your health.
Hello and welcome to the Talk to a Doc podcast. Thank you for listening. Today, we're going to talk about weight loss and the epidemic of obesity and practical steps for losing weight. This is something I've really wanted to talk about for some time now, and I have a perfect person with me today, Dr. Michelle McMacken. She's a board-certified internal medicine physician and an assistant professor of medicine at New York University School of Medicine. She practices primary care at Bellevue Hospital Center in New York City, where she also directs a medical weight loss program. She's an enthusiastic supporter of plant-based nutrition. She's committed to educating patients, medical students, and doctors about the power of healthy eating and lifestyle modification. Dr. McMacken, I'm very excited to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Katya, for the invitation. I'm excited to be here too.
Absolutely. Well, let's go ahead and start talking about the epidemic of obesity in the United States. It looks like we have more than half of the population now being overweight or obese. And is it too late to stop it?
Well, your numbers are correct, and really, there's a lot of complex mechanisms that drive obesity. Uh, Literally every day, more research is published on a variety of factors: neurologic, genetic, hormonal, environmental, and even infectious things that can contribute to obesity. But I think it's important to keep things in perspective because there's still a lot that we as individuals and as society can control right here and now without doing additional research to find more causes of obesity. So, for one thing, we live in a toxic food and lifestyle environment. It's pretty
Mm-hmm.
hard to dispute that. We're constantly being bombarded with advertisements for high fat foods and processed foods, sodas, sports drinks, fast foods, and portions are a lot bigger than they used to be. So, the other thing is that sometimes it's less expensive actually to buy fast foods than to buy healthier foods for some people, which is tragic. Everyone's really looking for convenience, which often also means processed foods. And our school lunch programs and even our hospitals serve some of the unhealthiest food of all.
Yeah.
So for many of us, our lives revolve around cars and sedentary jobs. So there's a really the environment is quite toxic. But I think there's a huge opportunity to reverse the current obesity trends at the federal and local policy levels. And I really encourage people to reach out to their legislators to push for changes. A few things come to mind. For starters, our government, I think should stop doling out the taxpayer-funded financial aid to the meat and dairy industries in the form of subsidies
Mm-hmm.
and checkoff programs. There's actually a very eye-opening and very well-researched book on this topic by David Simon called Meatonomics. But essentially, as a society, we're subsidizing products that cause disease, and then we're paying the medical costs of those diseases. So it's really a double whammy, and we should be subsidizing foods that promote health.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I'm optimistic, just like you. I feel it's not too late. More and more people are aware of the complexity of the problem, and as you just mentioned, it's not just what you do, but it's a policy and environment which should be corrected or improved in order for us to improve weight, to be healthier.
Agreed. And I think that there's you could come up with a number of other strategies at the policy level, including the school lunch program and the USDA guidelines committee. Um, and there's also a lot of gaps in terms of how the healthcare profession
Mm-hmm.
faces obesity because doctors are really not taught much about nutrition in their training, and they themselves can fall into unhealthy eating patterns. They're not taught that nutrition is one of the most powerful tools to combat chronic disease, and instead, they're really taught to just tell people to lose weight and refer them to an outside weight loss program, and when that fails, to try drugs and surgeries. So I think there's a lot of room for growth on the policy and healthcare professional levels. But the thing that we each really have the most control over ourselves is our individual food choices. So, and there's a lot of room for improvement in that. And we can spend time looking for quick fixes and blaming genetics and getting surgeries or lamenting food policy. But at the end of the day, most of us still do have a lot of control over what we eat. So the more people educate themselves about the healthiest eating patterns and the more they stay proactive about finding and choosing healthy options, I think the healthier we'll be as individuals and as society.
Right, and this is where I believe sometimes people are confused about what healthy options are, because there is so much
Yes.
misinformation or presented information in a way that I believe it's a good advice, but it doesn't go far enough sometimes. So those little changes might help a little bit, but it does not bring the dramatic change which is required sometimes for really losing weight and getting fit. And according to the latest research, plant-based diet actually might be the most effective way to lose weight. What do you think about that?
Well, we've known for a long time from large-scale epidemiologic studies that vegetarians and vegans consistently have a lower body mass index and lower levels of obesity compared with omnivores. We also know that vegetarians and vegans consistently have higher intakes of fiber and other nutrients, and this probably has something to do with why their body weights are healthier. There's also a number of new research studies showing that adopting a vegetarian diet can lead to weight loss without a lot of calorie counting. The research also suggests that a fully plant-based diet without animal products actually leads to the most weight loss compared to people following omnivorous diets. So I definitely like to promote a plant-based diet for weight loss.
This is what I promote as well. But I know there is still a lot of fear, I guess, around this diet because people feel that they might be not getting something if they don't use meat anymore, or they feel that this is kind of a socially accepted phenomenon and you have to fit in. So it's still a controversial subject for so many people. But the thing I would like to ask you now, is it possible to eat vegan diet and not lose weight?
Yes, that's definitely possible. You know, eating a vegan diet has really important benefits for the environment and for reducing animal suffering, but just because a food item is free of animal products doesn't mean it's
Right.
actually good for you. So, you know, many commercial snack cookies and products are vegan, and as vegans becoming more mainstream, you know, there's more and more of these products emerging on the market, which actually I applaud that vegans have more choices. But if you're trying to maximize your health and or lose weight, it's not enough to just eat foods that are free of animal products. You really have to center your diet around nutrient dense whole plant foods that are high in fiber, which is basically code for vegetables, fruits, beans, and legumes and whole grains. So if you regularly consume foods and beverages that are high in fat, added sugars, or refined carbs, it's going to be much harder to lose weight, whether you're vegan or not vegan, and you also won't get the short or long-term health benefits
Right,
of
so
that
now we need
diet.
to focus more on a balanced plant-based diet, which doesn't really have much refined sugars and flours, etc. You just everything you have just mentioned. So that would be a good way to name it. It's not just a vegan diet. Vegan diet could be very unhealthy. You can drink a lot of alcohol, which can be vegan as well. So it's not
Correct.
quite. They overlap, being vegan and a plant-based diet and being healthy, I guess. But for those people who are just looking to improve their weight, they should go just further than just being vegan. But it might be a good step. I
Yes.
had a person I work with. He, all by himself, he decided to lower his cholesterol, and all he did, he walked in a store and started looking at labels, and he, by reading the labels, found the food which did not have cholesterol, and he so that was just kind of, it
Hmm.
did help. He still didn't
Yes.
quite get rid of all the bad foods, but anyway, that's a good start. And from your experience, how long do you think it takes for people to lose weight on a plant-based diet?
I think that's a tricky question. The rate at which a person loses weight really depends on a lot of factors, like how active they are, how old they are, how much muscle they have, what are their other health conditions, and what medications they might be taking, and of course, how many calories, they're taking in. So, um, to be honest, I don't really encourage my patients to set goals around the rate of their weight loss. I really encourage them to set goals about just learning to transition to a healthier pattern of eating, like a whole foods, plant-based pattern, and to become more active. For most people, this actually means that they're going to lose weight at a safe rate and without all the tedium of measuring portions and counting calories and feeling hungry all the time. I'm not a big fan of fasting or those or other practices that aren't really sustainable in the long term.
So, what are the challenges you believe people face when they try to transition? As you just said, they need a transition. So, what are the maybe your recommendations to people who face some challenges, and how do they overcome them?
Right. So, I see one of the most common things I see is that people, when they try traditional approaches to weight loss, they start to feel very tied down and exhausted by the idea of counting their calories and measuring their portions and limiting how much they're eating. I don't know if you've ever tried keeping a food diary, but I did, and it was
It
so
is.
tedious. Um, again, that's where the plant-based approach I think comes in very handy because for most people, it can mean a big change in the way they eat. But once they start making the change, the weight kind of comes off more naturally without a lot of measuring and counting. Another common challenge that I see is really when people sort of have issues with social support or family support. For example, when they try to make a big change to the way they eat, it usually affects other people in
Mm-hmm.
their household. Nobody wants to cook two dinners, one for themselves and one for the rest of their family, or spend double their food budget. I think it's really essential that the whole family be involved. And even if other family members are not trying to lose weight, everyone should have a conversation about how they can best support the person who is trying to lose weight. We all have certain foods that we crave. And when those foods are readily available in your house, it's really nearly impossible to resist them, at least I find. So I think people need to be in the household, need to be on board with not having these foods in the house. In my practice, I really encourage my patients to bring their significant others or other family members with them to their appointments so that we can start the conversation together. I think probably a third very common challenge is that people get very frustrated when they're not losing weight as quickly as they'd like, which is, kind of getting back to your earlier question. This is, to me, completely understandable. There's a real desperation around weight loss. But as I said before, I really try to get people to focus on behavior goals and health goals rather than specific weight loss goals. Because when you focus on a behavior goal, it means rewarding yourself in some way or just feeling good about yourself when you make a positive behavior change, like trying a new vegetable or resisting a sugary coffee drink or even just taking a walk over lunch. And sometimes it helps to track those positive behaviors so you can look back and see the
Mm-hmm.
progress you're making. From the medical perspective, these changes actually do have important health benefits, even if you don't actually lose a great deal of weight. So the other thing is that for many people, when they lose weight slowly and gradually, it reflects the fact that they're making behavior changes that they can actually sustain in the long term.
Yes. And what do you do in the clinic you work? What are the protocols you use to work with patients who need to lose weight?
Sure. So when I see a patient for the first time, we have an extended initial visit where I take a history around pretty much their entire lifestyle and their medical history and their weight. And you learn so much about people by doing this and figuring out what have they tried to do to lose weight before, what worked for them, what didn't work, what do they struggle with, what's their social support, what are their food cravings, what are their insights into why it's hard for them to lose weight. A lot of people have a lot of insight and will actually kind of they kind of know what they need to do and they just need the support. I do, as a physician and a primary care doctor, I do look at, what are their other health conditions and what are the medications that they're taking that might actually be contributing to their body weight. A lot of doctors don't really aren't aware or don't necessarily think of that when they prescribe the medication. So I like to work as a team with people's other doctors to kind of see if there's other options. And of course, when people do start to lose weight, sometimes you can cut back on their medications, which is great. Looking, forward towards the future. So the initial visit is a lot of just getting to know the person, having them walk me through a typical day in terms of what they're doing during the day. Where are they eating most of their food? Is it outside of their home? Are they preparing in the home? Are they following a mostly sedentary type of pattern, or are they active? And then we sort of finish up that initial visit by discussing goals. And I often like to have people choose from a range of broad options where I say, based on what you told me, I think there's a few different broad categories of things that you can start to work on to change. And I let the patient really drive that conversation. I don't think it's really that useful for me to say to someone, here's what I want you to do. Good luck. I'll see you later. I kind of want them to drive the conversation about what they're ready to change. So that's where we start. And then I see the patient back as frequently as I can, ideally at the beginning, especially every 2 to 4 weeks, so that we can have a nice dialogue going on about what they're struggling with and what's hard for them, and I can keep building on the goals that they've set each
This
time.
sounds like a wonderful protocol, and I wish more doctors were doing the same things you're doing. This is fantastic. And I have found in my practice similar results that when you give power back to people, and they, as you said, most of them kind of know or have an idea that what they need to do, and exactly that support and encouragement and accountability as well. It's all plays an important role in changing the habit. Do you have a success story you can share with us and inspire maybe people who are feeling they kind of giving up on the losing weight altogether?
Yeah, definitely. I've seen a lot of people make tremendous strides just by starting to really kind of crowd out the animal products and processed foods in their diet. By the way, I like to use that term, and I was really excited. I listened to your most recent podcast with Jack Norris, and he which was excellent,
Thank
by
you.
the way, and he and he mentioned that same concept of just starting to transition with using the plant-based foods to crowd out the animal products, and I really do love that approach too. The one patient that I'm thinking of that comes to mind right now is a gentleman who weighed over 300 pounds when I first met him, and he really it was actually a great struggle for him just
Mm-hmm.
to walk the distance from the waiting room to my
Yeah.
exam room. And not only that, but he had an extremely limited budget, and he thought it would really be financially quite difficult for him to move away from the cheap convenience foods and the fast foods that he'd been eating for a long time. In fact, he really confessed he had not eaten a vegetable. He didn't even remember the last time. So, so we said he was ready and to start with a very simple goal of adding one serving of vegetables a day to his diet. And I told him, you can buy them fresh or you can buy them frozen, whatever is the least expensive for you. And we brainstormed exactly how he was going to accomplish that, to the
Mm-hmm.
painful detail. That's one of the nice things about having the time to do this and troubleshooting this with people. So he came back to us a month later, and he brought his vegetable diary. So
Good.
he showed us he had learned to kind of explore the taste of vegetables. It was new for him. And I really call that the beginning of taste bud rehab. Gradually then over the next, visits, he progressed to trying out beans and whole grains. He started to learn some simple recipes, and he really just kind of got into a routine. He lost the taste for red meat. He lost the taste for chicken and other poultry. And as he started losing weight, he started feeling so much better and had so much more energy that he really began to relish this new way of eating. And he started exercising every morning because once people who are very, very obese, even losing a few pounds, they notice I've found a dramatic benefit
Mm-hmm.
in their joint pain. So he was able to walk a little bit more, and then that in turn kind of helped keep the weight off and gave him even more energy. when I last saw him, which was about 2 weeks ago, he had lost over 60 pounds in the past year. He's completely overhauled his lifestyle. He's shopping at farmers markets. He's eating a mostly plant-based diet, and his primary care doctor has actually been able to stop several of his medications. So it's extremely
That is a
rewarding.
wonderful story, and I hope people hear it and decide for themselves that that's possible to do. And it doesn't have to be that much more expensive. This is something I found.
I agree completely.
But it's a change, so you have to. It takes time. There is no way around it. It just takes time. Absolutely.
That's
So,
right.
so what do you personally do to stay healthy? What's your practice?
I love this question. Um, I have to. I'll be the first to say that I'm not perfect, and I love dessert as much as the next person, but I really try to keep it in balance. So I've been vegetarian for over 30 years myself, and I've been vegan for the last 8. I'm really motivated, honestly, by the ethics of being interconnected with other species and our planet and maximizing health and compassion for all
Mm-hmm.
living beings. And as a doctor, I really try to practice what I preach to my patients. So I eat whole plant foods as much as I can, and I really do try to limit processed foods and sugary drinks. Since I live in New York City, I'm very fortunate that I can integrate a lot of walking into my daily life, but I also try to practice yoga and some strength training. I do try to meditate a bit each morning, and I love to sleep, which is also, by the way, very important for healthy body weight is to have proper sleep. But I definitely have room for improvement. So, like everybody else, I'm a work in
Right.
progress.
What made you switch from vegetarian to being vegan? I'm just curious.
Honestly, it was it had to do with an awakening and an awareness, an additional awareness about how my food came to my plate, and when I started to learn about what's involved in producing cheese, for example, or producing milk, what that really means in terms of our planet, in terms of the animals involved, I realized I really don't that's not in line with my ethics. That's not in line with how I want to live. So I thought, well, I don't know if I can give up cheese, but I'm going to give it a try.
Yes.
And I just said, I'm just going to go one day without cheese. And that one day turned into a few days, and then it turned into a week. And I found things that I enjoyed instead of cheese that
Like
came from
what?
plants. And I was, well, I think at the beginning, I substituted salty foods, creamy
Hmm.
foods like avocado, and for me personally, I found that when I'm just moving away from it, while at the beginning it was hard because I was in this routine and I had to remind myself, no, that's not, you have to move away from that and plan other things. But once I got into a new routine, I honestly, for me, I the cravings were just not there anymore, especially when I also reminded myself of the process involved in, dairy and what happens to our environment and the animals that I really cared about. So for me, it was a trade-off that was tremendously beneficial.
It's the knowing. Once you know and get to the core of it, I think that's a great motivation.
It's hard to look back.
I have two last questions for you. First, do you supplement? And then, is it really necessary for people to give up all animal products to lose weight and be healthy?
Those are great questions. So regarding the supplement, I think this is an area of some controversy. I tend to fall in the camp of just getting nutrients from food
Mm-hmm.
and from whole foods. I I don't really know of a lot of medical literature to support supplementation of any kind. There are some exceptions, and I do, of course, take a B12 supplement, and during the winter months, I take a vitamin D supplement. But beyond that, I really just try to get my nutrients from food. And the nice thing about eating mostly whole food, plant-based diet is you're getting so far and away more nutrients than you would if you were eating a standard American diet. You alluded at the beginning that people worry about becoming deficient in something, but the irony is that it's actually the opposite. You're actually getting more nutrients that way. And most Americans are very, very deficient in a lot of nutrients by the way they're eating now. Those are my thoughts on supplements. And but in the summer, I live at a latitude where in the winter I don't think, I'm not going to be able to produce much vitamin D outside in the sunlight. So I do think I have to take a supplement. But in the summer months, I do just fine with a little bit of sunshine, a
Right.
few days a week.
That's that's my thinking as well. I was just curious to know what you do personally, because I think that when people learn what you personally do, I think they are more empowered because they have an example. That's why I'm so detailed about asking what you personally do, because it's very helpful. It really is. Yeah.
Yeah. Your other question about does a person have to eat a 100% plant-based diet to lose weight or be healthy? So I don't think, in my training, I really like to look to the medical evidence. What are the studies that have been published to help us answer a question rather than kind of guessing? And I don't think there's, the literature around plant-based diets is growing. And my take on it is that the literature is suggesting that it is still the optimal way to eat. When you look at epidemiologic studies again, they actually go back and look at for every next step that a person takes, going from omnivore to then, eating just chicken and fish, to then just eating fish, to being vegetarian, and then finally to vegan, there's health benefits at every stage that grow. So you get the most health benefits, the longest lifespan, the lowest mortality, the least cardiovascular disease, and so forth when you get to the point where you're plant-based. Looking at more prospective studies, I alluded earlier to recent studies on weight loss, and it did show that the plant-based diet compared to omnivorous diets, people lost twice as much weight. I think the more we move in that direction, the better we will all be, and the better our environment will be. Just compassion for animals and the earth, and it's a nice serendipity that it all kind of ties together. But can I answer your question? Do you have to be 100% plant-based to be healthy? I would say yes, but I'm not sure the evidence is overwhelming at the moment. I'm hoping that the research continues to
I
bear this
believe
out.
it will,
I
because
agree.
even one egg a day is not beneficial. It's crazy. It's just
Yeah.
I get this question often. Well, my grandmother used to eat this way, and the eggs were just better, and milk was healthier, so why not? And even if it's a healthy milk, it's still not good for you.
I think healthy milk is an oxymoron. I don't think there is such a thing as a healthy milk. The more we look at some of the pattern of eating that involves animal products, we're seeing associations with a number of different chronic diseases, and these are diseases that people around us are living with. These are, it's staggering the rate of chronic disease that we're facing.
Absolutely, I agree. And well, this has been a great interview. Thank you so much for sharing research and experiences and stories. And I hope that will inspire people to move closer to the plant-based diet and enjoy the benefits, because benefits come almost immediately once you switch.
I agree. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you for listening. If you like this episode, please rate and review it on iTunes. Visit my website, wellnesswithkatya.com, to learn more and subscribe to this podcast. If you have a specific question you would like me to ask a doctor during my next interview, email me at coach@wellnesswithkatya.com. It is Katya for Katya. Thanks.